Hey everyone, and welcome to my channel. My name is Giusi, and I talk about various healing topics, subconscious programming, as well as my journey with autism. So if you're new here, thanks for being here. If you can subscribe, that'd be awesome, or like this video at least. Give it a thumbs up. Thank you. Okay, so today's topic is, so you found out you're autistic, now what? Late diagnosed autistic. So I'm 45, and I found out just before I turned 45 a year ago that I'm autistic. It was actually through my burnout that was not getting better that I learned that I was autistic. There was other things occurring, like my meltdowns, these frequent meltdowns. I was having emotional upheavals, and I didn't understand. And it was just like this series of events that led me to realize that I was autistic. And um, so you're here at this place. What do you do now that you're here? So I'm going to go over 5 things that you can do once you get here. I wrote them on a little paper here, and I'll go through them. So the first one is to get to diagnose or to not. So that's the first one. Now, this is going to be something that's very personal. Some people will want to get a diagnosis, and that will be important to them, and to other people it will not be important to them, or they won't want to for various other reasons. Unfortunately, having a diagnosis sometimes on your record can affect you depending on where you live, in what country, especially with laws, or if there's things you want to do, for instance, like if you want to adopt, and various other things, unfortunately, because of the stigmas that are around it. Also, to diagnose here, if you want to get a diagnosis, there is quite a long wait time. Like, I live in Toronto, Ontario, and it's about like 4 years, I think, the wait time to wait for a diagnosis, or you can get one privately and pay like $3,500. So that's that. So, but then there's other reasons why there's not actually like a whole bunch of support, or none, for if you're, autistic as an adult. There may be some in terms of like having maybe some financial help, in terms of like subsidies and things like that. Maybe, I don't even know. So you might have to look that up depending on where you live. This might be different in other countries, in other states, other provinces. I know that they can have accommodations if you're in school, like post-secondary school and things like that, for various other things like autism and ADHD. So you would have to look into that. But for the most part, there isn't a whole lot of support or services available, unfortunately, for adult autistic people. So it's a little bit frustrating. So this is something, that's the first thing that you're going to kind of sit with, and you're going to decide if you want to do that. If you don't want to go for formal diagnosis, please know that self-diagnosis is totally valid. Don't listen to the people who tell you that it's not. We don't need people gatekeeping us. I think for most of us, we've been gatekeeped. we there was gatekeeping our whole entire lives for how we were and how we showed up. So most people, if you're autistic, you probably like researched the hell out of it and went through a series of online tests and looked up everything. And as we all know, it's not like you're one or two things and you're like, oh, I'm autistic. From the plethora of all of the things and how much you struggled your entire life for all of those reasons. So you will know. So that's number one. You're going to decide if you're going to pursue a diagnosis or not. Number 2, you're probably going to practice unmasking. So if you're someone who did find out you're autistic because you were in burnout, which is a lot of the reasons why most of us, especially us females who are finding out that we're late diagnosed autistic women in our like late 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, some of us, then chances are it's because you were in burnout. And when you're in burnout, the ability to mask becomes really, really hard. And so you're going to kind of sit with this thing where, like, what do you do? Do you unmask? Will you be unmasking? It feels much easier to be your unmasked version. However, it's like this double-edged sword, because you also feel weird and you're feeling like, do I look more autistic now because you're doing things, when the reality is that you always were those things. You just were not doing them in public around other people, and as I spit out here. And so you now, because you're acting like how you actually are, you feel like maybe other people are judging you, or that people are going to look at you now all of a sudden from a different lens and maybe look down on you or think less than you. And there's so much stigma. We also have our own internalized stigma and ableism around it. So that's something we need to sit with. But we're going to kind of practice unmasking. We're going to experiment with that and see how it is. But ultimately, what we're going to want to do is start being more ourselves and more unmasked versions of ourselves. Not because if we're in burnout, especially, masking requires a high amount of energy, which we don't have. So we're going to want to limit that thing. Unfortunately, there's going to be many opportunities that we're going to have to still show up as our masked versions of ourselves, because it's quite frankly not going to be safe for us to be our unmasked versions. So that's number 2. Number 3 is burnout recovery. If you found out that you're autistic because you're in burnout, then burnout recovery is going to obviously be very vital. And this is going to really, really set you back in many ways, mostly because for all of us who are high functioning, which is a BS label, what it really means is high masking. For all of us who are high masking, chances are, if you're anything like me, you probably were an overachiever, and you probably did all of the things, and you probably had your plate full all the time, and you can smash it out of the park all the time, and you were good at doing everything. You were good at balancing and juggling everything. You took on multiple roles, like me, going to school full time, working full time at the same time, or working full time and having another part time job, and also going to school in the evenings at the same time. These are the kind of things I did always. Whereas now I'm in burnout, I can't do those things. I can barely wash my dishes. It's really, really hard. And so burnout recovery is going to require us to really take it down several notches. And you're going to have to really prioritize your rest and your sleep and saying no and just relaxing and pausing. And the most important part of all of this is to not shame yourself. If you cannot get your chores done, especially, that's a big one for people who are in burnout. If you can't get things done around your house, you can't make yourself feel bad about it. If you cannot function at the same level that you did before, do not beat yourself up over that. Do not shame yourself when you're in this position, because it's already so difficult. We're going through this upheaval. We're going through grief, relief, sadness, anger when we're first learning about this. That's something I've talked about in my other videos. And so the last thing we need to do is shame ourselves for not being able to keep up with the very unrealistic standards that we were probably living our whole lives as we were high masking. So rest and recharge is really, really important when we are recovering from our burnout. And if you can limit your work, I had quit my job. It's gonna be almost 2 years now. My second, because I was having, working 2 jobs and also doing classes and working on my practice. I quit my other job almost 2 years ago, and I'm still in burnout now, but it's definitely a little better now that I'm learning how to be more easeful and things like that. So this is something you're gonna have to kind of work around. If you are able to take time off work, then by all means do that if you can. Unfortunately, many of us don't have that luxury of taking time off work and being off and taking a sabbatical or any of those things. So try to figure out the ways that you can give yourself the support that you need. And that's physical, mental, emotional, all that stuff. And rest. Rest as much as you can. I know that sounds ridiculous, but literally rest. Be in quiet all the time. Okay, sorry, someone's at my window. Okay, number 4 is find neurodivergent communities. This is very important. I talk about this, how neurodivergent people need people who are the same as them, because you went your whole life trying to fit into this, this society that was nothing like you, not understanding why you were different, feeling like you're someone from out of this world and all this stuff. And just having a really hard time with that. And so finding other people who are similar to you, where you will be seen and where you will speak the same language, is going to be very, very important once you're like in this unmasking and discovery portion of your life, because it just kind of opens up a different type of connection where you can be on the same wavelength with people, and that really offers you a difference in your perspective and lens of the world. Because if you're anything like me and you were always surrounded by people who just never understood you or passed you over or discarded you, or not discarded you, but like just kind of like, they just made you feel like irrelevant, or like, how many people did this happen to where you'd be like with a group of friends and they were having a discussion, and then you'll like share something and like da, 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 and then they'll just like look at you and then okay, and then start talking to the rest of the group, and you just get like completely ignored. This is like literally like my whole life. So find other people who are neurodivergent or other autistic friends, because I promise you that it'll be very different when you have conversations with them. They will listen to you, and they will hear you and see you, and this is really, really important. So that is number 4. And then finally, number 5 is you will rediscover who you are. So this is going to be like huge opportunity to really find out who you are. And one of the things that I went through when I first learned that I was autistic is like this crisis, this identity crisis, or whatever it's called, existential crisis, because all of a sudden I'm like, all these things that I thought were me, my personality, all these quirky things that were like me, I was just like, they're not really quirky things about me, they're just like autistic traits. And so I think a lot of people go through this. It's like, oh, really? I thought these were all weirdo things about me, but it's like, nope, they're not. So doesn't mean that some quirky traits maybe they are mine on my own, but you kind of go through this like identity crisis, and you start to wonder like, who am I? Because you have ability to be like this, expert level masker in public and be exactly what needs to be, like who you need to be to kind of succeed in life. And then at the same time, you have all these little quirks that are really just kind of part of your like autism. So you've got to wonder like, who am I really then? Who am I as a person? And so you kind of have this opportunity to really go in and discover who that is, to learn who you are, to figure out what makes you tick. What is it that you actually like? What are the things that you enjoy? And part of that, during this period for me, for instance, I just really went back to like my childhood and remembering who I was in the beginning before I had to learn how to mask and be these different versions and things like that. And I was just very quiet, nerdy kind of girl who was dorky and liked to be by myself. I didn't like to be around people. I was very solitary and in my head, and was very playful and just really like offbeat, kind of like with my silly humor and the things I like to do. I was very like crafty and just nonsensical about things. And so just discovering those things will be important. So anyways, those are 5 things that I think are really, important things that you will kind of be hitting once you learn that you're, if you're a late diagnosed autistic person. Those are the top 5 things, I think, or the main 5 things that you're kind of address or be faced with. So anyways, if you enjoyed this video, follow and subscribe for more content. If you want to share your experience in the comments below, I would really appreciate that. Thank you for being here with me as always. Take care. Bye.